Alright, so hello, my name is Jacob Rucker, and this is going to be my presentation for our business ethics final presentation. My topic is on the ethical decisions of Tesla Motor Company using cobalt in their batteries. So, a little bit about Tesla. Actually, before I start, I've had a cold a little bit this week, so if I cough, I do apologize. So, that being said, a little bit about Tesla from their website. Tesla was founded in 2003 by a group of engineers who wanted to prove that people didn't need to compromise to drive electric. That electric vehicles can be better, quicker, and more fun to drive than gasoline cars today. Today, Tesla builds not only all electric vehicles, but also infinitely is capable of clean energy generation and storage products. Tesla believes the faster the world stops relying on fossil fuels and moves towards a zero-emission future, the better. With Tesla building its most affordable car yet, Tesla continues to produce accessible and affordable vehicles to more and more people, ultimately accelerating the advent of clean transport and clean energy production. Electric cars, batteries, and renewable energy generation storages already exist independently, but when combined, they become even more powerful. That's the future we want. Tesla's mission, from their mission statement, is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy through increasingly affordable electric vehicles and energy products. To ramp production up to 500,000 cars per year, Tesla alone will require today's entire worldwide supply of lithium-ion batteries. The Tesla Gigafactory was born out of a necessity and will continue to supply enough batteries to support Tesla's projected vehicle demand. Said by Elon Musk, the CEO of the company, our goal when we created Tesla a decade ago was the same goal as it is today: to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport by bringing compelling mass-market electric cars to the market as soon as possible. So that right there is a little background about Tesla Motor from their website page and from their mission statement that they have provided. So now it's time to clearly state the ethical issues. Tesla has been the forefront of electric vehicles and is widely known now. Tesla's mission seems very optimistic and beneficial to problems we face with gas-powered vehicles. With that being said, it seems to be one of those things that is too good to be true. I have been following this company for quite some time now, and there are a lot of things that Tesla has done that are not that good. The one major ethical issue Tesla faces has to do with their batteries. Tesla's batteries contain cobalt in them, which is a mineral that is mined heavily from the Dominican Republic of the Congo and Africa. The people of the DRC, which I'll abbreviate for the Dominican Republic of the Congo, that work in these cobalt mines are children as young as the ages of 4 years old, mining the cobalt that Tesla uses in their batteries. So, the next part of this presentation is to present foundation and background information on the issue, pros and cons of this issue or topic, and present all sides of the issue. So I'm going to go into that now. Here are the details. The research I've gathered throughout these articles and investigations are astonishing and horrifying. From an article written in abc.net, it really shows how bad this situation is. Cobalt is mined in a string of countries around the world, including Australia and Cuba, but most of the world's supplies comes from one country in Africa, the Dominican Republic of the Congo, or the DRC. A nation with a long record of poorly enforced labor laws and standards of child exploitation. According to human rights organization Amnesty International, that growth has put pressure on the miners in the DRC to ramp up production, leading into turns of tens of thousands of children being lured or forced into grueling and dangerous mine work. UNICEF estimated in 2014 that 40,000 children were toiling illegally in the Congolese mines. Now, that was a severe understatement given the recent increase in global demand. So that came out in 2014, 40,000 miners that are children. That number is astonishingly bigger now. As you can see, there are some serious problems that are going on with the cobalt mining industry and production in the DRC. When we're talking about mined cobalt, the raw material supply largely comes from this country. About 66% of the world's cobalt comes from the Congo. Tesla gets their lithium-ion batteries from a company called Panasonic. They're a giant company that creates a lot of electronic products and creates Tesla's lithium-ion batteries. And they play a huge role in Tesla's manufacturing. Without Panasonic making their batteries, Tesla does not have batteries. With that being said, I decided to look into Panasonic. Surprise, surprise, there's more ethical issues. Big news hit in the middle of this year with Panasonic screwing up big time and brought Tesla into the mix as well. News hit saying Tesla's battery maker suspends cobalt supplier amid sanctions concern. So what does this mean, right? Information from this article presented as such. Panasonic Corporation said it was unable to determine how much of the cobalt used in the batteries for making its Tesla batteries came from Cuba, a country subject to U.S. sanctions, and that it has suspended relationships with a Canadian supplier as a result of its concerns. So basically what happened was Panasonic got cobalt from this Canadian company that was getting their cobalt from Cuba, but putting it into Tesla batteries, and Cuba and the United States do not get along, and there's U.S. sanction laws that say that can't happen. So, to continue with this, the Japanese battery supplier said it did not know how much cobalt from Cuba was ultimately used in the lithium-ion batteries it supplied to the U.S. market for Tesla, due to commonly of sources by its suppliers in several phases of manufacturing. So basically, Panasonic's just trying to cover themselves up, saying that they didn't know how much, or like there's so much going on that they really couldn't keep track. But in reality, they really knew that they messed up. So the company declined to identify its Canadian supplier, but a person with the knowledge of Panasonic's supply chain identified the company as Sherritt International. The Canadian company produces cobalt in the Moa mine in Cuba through a joint venture with the Cuban state-owned General Nickel Company. Sherritt declined to comment, but Panasonic said the suspension of ties was precautionary measures following guidance from the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control over the scope of the U.S. ban on Cuban origin imports, which dates back to 1960. Shortly after this issue, Tesla Inc. released multiple statements. This big statement was their conflict minerals report, and increasing tracking and reducing cobalt use. The statement revolves around this. Tesla and its batteries and manufacturing partner Panasonic both say that they plan to reduce further use of cobalt in their batteries. They both wrote, "It is important to note that there is very little cobalt in Tesla's battery cells. On a relative basis, cobalt simply is not that significant to the composition of Tesla's battery cells, as we mainly use NCA batteries, which contain sustainability less cobalt than NMC batteries do. Cells used in Model 3 production are the highest energy density cells used in any electronic vehicle. We have achieved this by significantly reducing cobalt content per battery pack while increasing nickel content and still maintaining superior thermal stability. The cobalt content of our nickel-cobalt aluminum cathode, the NCA batteries, chemistry is already lower than the next generation cathodes that will be made in other productions, which is the nickel-manganese-cobalt ratio, the NMC batteries that other companies are using. While it is true that they have significantly reduced the amount of cobalt in their batteries, it's still in the batteries." So they have then released a statement about their responsible sourcing strategy, which says Tesla is committed to only sourcing responsibly produced minerals. In addition to Tesla's superior code of conduct, Tesla has a human rights and conflict minerals policy that outlines our expectations to all suppliers and partners that work with us. We strictly follow all U.S. and foreign law and require our supply chain to do the same. All of our contracts require suppliers to adhere to our human rights policy and environmental and safety requirements. Tesla is committed to making working conditions in Tesla's supply chain safe and humane, ensuring that all workers are treated with respect and dignity, and that manufacturing processes are environmentally responsible. Tesla suppliers are also required to provide evidence of the existing policies that address these social, environmental, and sustainability issues, as well as responsible sourcing. Almost all of the cobalt manufactured by Panasonic and Tesla comes from the DRC, which does not even come close to falling under making working conditions in Tesla's supply chain safe and humane. The DRC is an extremely poor nation, yet sits on top of a cobalt utopia. With cobalt being such a high-valued mineral right now, as electronic vehicles need cobalt to operate, it is a way for the nation to financially capitalize on it. In March of this year, the DRC claimed cobalt as a strategic metal. So what does that mean? In a news article found from Reuters, it covers what this means exactly. A new mining code was signed into law on Friday by President Joseph Kabila, despite vigorous opposition by global mining companies with operations in Congo such as Glencore, Randgold, and China Molybdenum. Royalties paid to the government from cobalt mining will jump from 10% to 2% previously. Miners of the two metals used in batteries would also have to pay a royalty of 3.5% under the new code if they have not been designated as strategic. The government considers minerals with the strategic designation important for the economic, social, and industrial future of this country. A quote from Jean Makunza says, "We need to make enough money before we run out of these minerals, so that is why they are so strategic to this country. We have to make sure for the next 20 years we make money from these minerals because demand is going to be so high. It is going to continue to grow and we are not going to stop raising the royalties on these minerals." As awful as cobalt mining is, it is a way to finally create wealth and generate wealth for the DRC since they are such a poor country. So as the demand for cobalt keeps growing, they're going to keep raising royalties and taxing and raising the price to mine these minerals in order to basically make the country more wealth because they don't know how long it's going to last. So they're going to try and make as much money as they can right now while the opportunity presents itself. With all this information brings up the question, why don't we just make batteries without cobalt, right? Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, tweeted earlier this year that the next-gen Tesla cars will not contain cobalt. Well, now it's time to do more research, right? I came across an article on The Verge and it brought up some valid points and questions. A lot of companies, including Tesla, are interested in making a zero cobalt battery. When do you think it will happen? Is a question, right? Tesla uses a formulation called NCA batteries, which is made up of nickel, cobalt, and aluminum. That is very low cobalt already. Over the last 6 years, Tesla and Panasonic, which is Tesla's battery supplier, have reduced cobalt dependency by about 60% already. It's already low. We think it's going to be difficult for them to go much lower because you run into engineering problems. Well, what are those problems? Cobalt is a safe element in the cathode. As you reduce it, you reduce the life cycle of the cell. The current market standard for electronic vehicles is an 8-year warranty to retain 80% of the original capacity of the battery. You need to be sure that your battery can do that, otherwise you have to replace it under warranty, which is way more expensive than a theoretical savings you gave from making with less cobalt. As there's safety issues as well. As you decrease the amount of cobalt, you increase the amount of nickel. The cells can overheat and it can no longer efficiently cool itself, which can lead to combustion. That's a relatively low risk, but it is also not a risk that can be taken, and you need special technology to avoid that. There we go. Plus, the low cobalt formulations need to produce in especially dry environments, and so there's a cost to making them as well. I think it's very challenging from an engineering standpoint to solve these problems. So I think that current NCA technology is going to be dominant probably for about the next 10 years. And then you look at the dark side of all of this. The DRC has accounted for 66,000 tons of globally mined cobalt of the 123,000 tons last year. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, that's the official sector. There's also an artisanal stream of production, some of it using child labor, which is most of it, and some of it controlled by insurgent militias. Another problem that the DRC faces is that there's insane instability in the political aspect. These mines are being run by militias, unstable political groups, and they're taking all of the money and the miners aren't getting absolutely any of it. So then you have a gray area, right? So quite how much of this cobalt in this gray area sector generates is unknown. But it is an undisputed fact that it has been seeping into the official supply chain for years. Speaking at the London Metal Exchange seminar in October, Tony Southgate, head of the Cobalt Marketing and Eurasian Resources Group, warned that it's almost inevitable that there are mobile phones in this room that are containing cobalt from child labor in the DRC. If that doesn't put things into perspective, then I don't really know what will. Child labor is one of the multiple problems that is posed by the DRC to the emergence of an efficient raw materials chain for commodities used in batteries. The legal and financial framework around a country's mining sector is both opaque and manipulated without political interference. A recent study by U.S. advocacy group the Carter Center described the state mining companies Geka Mines as operating as a parallel state and concluded that $750 million from the DRC's copper mine privatization process cannot be tracked reliably. $750 million cannot be tracked. The DRC is so politically unstable and unregulated that most of these companies do not need to show proof of where and how they got their minerals. As inhumane as the working conditions are in the DRC, they produce over 60% of the cobalt produced in this world. Businesses like Tesla are now seeking new places to get their supplies from, but they are struggling to do so because of how much they need. And the DRC is the only place that can supply the amount of cobalt that they need. With EVs, which are electronic vehicles, being the new wave, I looked into the lithium and cobalt commodities market as well, like the financial side of it. I found this information very helpful and insightful from the Energy and Commodities Exchange. Lithium and cobalt are the latest vogue in commodity markets, as evidenced by the significant growth in their prices since 2016. On the London Metal Exchange, the average spot price of cobalt went from $22,813 per metric ton in 2016 to $87,352 in 2018, a 282% increase. The weighted average stock price of the largest public cobalt mining companies went up 85% in the same period. Similarly, Asian and South American lithium carbonate prices went up 93% and 120% respectively, and the weighted average of the stock price of the five largest lithium-ion firms increased by 84%. As you can see, the prices in all aspects of cobalt and lithium-ion from the Commodities Exchange are increasing by insane numbers within the last 2 years. The DRC is notorious for its political instability and for being in a constant dispute over the ownership of its minerals and riches. Thus, any sort of conflict around major mines can affect the market. Another red flag comes from the fact that nearly 20% of the cobalt exported from the DRC is extracted by hand, often involving child labor. This creates ethical and reputational problems for buyers, which include some of the biggest names in high tech. Companies such as Tesla and Panasonic have responded by adopting due diligence practices that take human rights into consideration. However, political instability and human rights abuses have ultimately forced automakers and battery manufacturers to begin looking for permanent solutions like reducing or eliminating the amount of cobalt. Tesla, for example, has managed to lower the amount of cobalt per car from 11 kilograms in Model S to 4.5 kilograms in the most recent Model 3. Tesla has survived on innovation, and ethical problems they face truly may put the company back against the wall. With all these issues they have faced this last year, they would need heavy support from shareholders and investors to keep afloat. Then, in September, they ran into even more trouble. Although this does not tie into the ethical issue presented in this project, it creates major problems and more challenges for Tesla. In September of this year, CEO Elon Musk was in a lawsuit with the Securities and Exchange Commission. The reason behind this was Elon Musk's Twitter posts about making Tesla private. Elon posted a tweet without telling anyone that he wanted to take the company private at $420 a share. The SEC adds that the NASDAQ requires listed companies to give at least 10 minutes prior to notice sharing material information about an event, such as an ongoing private transaction, and that Musk failed to do so. It also claims that Musk didn't consult with Tesla's board or other employees about his tweets before publishing them, and that he didn't contact the existing Tesla shareholders in advance to gauge their interest in the transaction. The details of the lawsuit are that Musk must step down as Tesla's chairman and be replaced by an independent chairman. Musk will be ineligible to re-elect as chairman for 3 years. Also, Musk and Tesla will pay a separate $20 million penalty, resulting in $40 million total in penalties, and will be distributed to the harmed investors of a court-approved case. Tesla stock, let alone, dropped 12% the day of the SEC lawsuit was finalized. So now we identify the stakeholders in the company. When it comes to stakeholders, some benefit and some do not. Let's look at some examples. To start things off on a positive note, the consumers and the people that are buying Tesla's cars are in a great place. Tesla produces a very well-built car, and the satisfactory rate is significantly higher compared to every other car manufacturer out there. The consumers are investing a lot of money into Tesla's product, but in return get amazing products with outstanding support from the company. Tesla does a great job at making sure their car owners are very satisfied. Without consumers, Tesla wouldn't be able to sell cars, let alone wouldn't be able to make money. Then you have the shareholders. Shareholders have been negatively affected with the recent news of Tesla stock decreasing and failure to make profits, so the shareholders are being affected in a negative light due to the fact that the company has not been able to make a lot of money this year. Panasonic is a major stakeholder due to the fact that they manufacture Tesla's lithium-ion batteries. Panasonic also has made massive investments in the Tesla as well, and they have both positive and negative effects. With the $1.86 billion investment in the partnership of building a new manufacturing plant, this brings huge volume of production to Panasonic, although they have taken hits that Tesla's ran into some serious manufacturing delays and they're losing money because of it. Based off of the ethical issues, cobalt mining in the DRC maintains as a stakeholder as well. The child laborers and the people that are mining these minerals to make these batteries work in inhumane conditions in a nation with unstable political leaders, and as awful as it is, at the same time, it is creating jobs for these people. So that's how they are affected and incorporated in the stakeholder position. So how does this issue affect society, government, and business? From a business aspect, the effect is that these technology companies and car makers become increasingly reliant on cobalt. Many businesses, governments, and nonprofit leaders have grown concerned about the minerals and controversial supply chain. Global demand for cobalt in this battery sector alone has tripled since 2011 and is expected to continue to grow on this trajectory, rising from 46,000 metric tons in 2017 to 190,000 metric tons by 2026. Many industry analysis companies and governments have raised concerns over the concentration of cobalt mining in the DRC, which has long been plagued by corruption and political volatility. Should instability disrupt mining operations, no other country would be able to increase production enough to meet global demand. So, Chinese firms produce more than half the world's refined cobalt and more than 3/4 of the world's cobalt chemicals. And if push comes to shove, the cobalt mining that is already in China will stay in China. Government effect. After implementing the Democratic Republic of the Congo's demanding new mining regulations on June 9th, Joseph Kabila's government has shown little interest in bending its mining companies' requests on suggestions. After all, Kabila's country has the upper hand, fueled by the continued Chinese investments and lack of real competitors in the cobalt markets and a substantial share of other strategic metals like copper. Society effect. The effects of people are definitely in the DRC as a country. The major problem is the dust, which contains cobalt and many other minerals, including uranium. This dust is released during the process of mining and settles onto the ground. The researchers collected blood and urine samples from 72 Kasula residents, including 32 children. A control group with similar composition was selected in a neighboring district. Off of this study, children living in the mining district had 10 times as much cobalt in their urine as children living somewhere else. The values are much higher than what we'd expect from European factory workers. This study may be limited into a scope, but the results are crystal clear. The differences cannot be attributed to coincidence. The long-term consequences of this increased exposure to cobalt are not clear yet, but it's not optimistic. So, why do we need to be aware of this issue? I think it's prevalent of why we need to be aware of this issue. My last words of this presentation come from an article that I read that kind of ties everything together. The world is a complicated place, and a perfect example right now is if they're damned if they stay and they're damned if they don't leave conundrum that faces the buyers of cobalt in the Dominican Republic of the Congo. So with that being said, that is the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed. I know it was a little long, but yeah, that's it. Thank you.